The courtroom doors swung open. A wave of silence followed as Elon Musk stepped inside. Cameras clicked. Pens scratched against notepads. Every eye in the room turned toward him, not just out of curiosity, but anticipation. This wasn't just another legal proceeding. This was something bigger. Everyone knew it. Musk walked with the same unbothered confidence he always carried, his steps steady, expression unreadable. He had faced boardrooms, investors, even world leaders, but today, the battlefield was different. A place where logic and reason didn't always win. A place where power wasn't just about influence, it was about control. At the far end of the courtroom, Judge Arthur Grayson sat perched on the bench, flipping through case files like he had all the time in the world. His reputation preceded him. Sharp-tongued, unpredictable, and unrelenting, he had a habit of making high-profile cases feel like a personal stage for his own amusement. And from the smirk tugging at the corner of his lips, it was clear he had already decided today's performance would be no different. Without looking up, he snapped the folder shut. The sound echoed through the silent room. Then, finally, his gaze lifted, settling on Musk. "Mr. Musk," he said slowly, drawing out each syllable like a taunt. "I assume you've prepared something worthwhile today? Or should we skip ahead to the part where you waste the court's time?" A few snickers rose from the defense table. A couple of smirks exchanged. Musk, however, didn't react. He met the judge's stare with the same steady calmness he always carried. "Your Honor," he said, voice measured, "I believe facts will do most of the talking today." Grayson leaned back in his chair, unimpressed. "Facts," he repeated, his tone thick with mockery. A bold word coming from a man whose empire is built on speculation. The weight in the room shifted. This wasn't about the case anymore. This was personal. Musk tilted his head slightly, studying him. "I'd be happy to present them." Grayson smirked. "Of course, you would," he mused. "You do love an audience, after all." Another chuckle from the defense attorneys. Musk ignored them. This case had been making headlines for weeks. Allegations of financial misconduct, whispers of insider trading. Musk had heard it all before, but something about today felt different. Something off. The judge's fingers drummed lightly on the bench, eyes narrowing. "Tell me, Mr. Musk, should we expect a sudden trip to Mars in the middle of your defense? Or will this be a rare occasion where you actually stay grounded?" More laughter rippled through the room. Musk remained expressionless. "I'm here for the truth, Your Honor," he said. "Not theatrics." The amusement in Grayson's face flickered, just for a second. A crack in the mask. And that's when Musk knew. This wasn't just about a hearing. The judge had a reason to bury this case. He just hadn't realized Musk was already ahead of him. The judge exhaled loudly, flipping through pages as if Musk's defense was nothing more than an inconvenience. His fingers tapped impatiently against the wooden bench, his expression locked in something between amusement and contempt. "Mr. Musk," he said, barely glancing up, "I have to ask, does all your legal strategy rely on grandstanding? Or do you actually have something worthwhile to present?" A few snickers echoed from the defense table. Musk remained still, his expression unreadable. "I'm certain the facts will speak for themselves, Your Honor," he replied evenly. Grayson smirked, his gaze sharp. "Facts. Right. You know, you remind me of every tech billionaire who thinks they can outmaneuver the system. But the law, Mr. Musk, doesn't bend for egos." The comment lingered, the tension thickening in the room. Musk knew what the judge was doing, setting a tone, baiting him. He didn't take it. Instead, he leaned back slightly. "That's good to hear, Your Honor. I'd hate to think personal bias had any place in your rulings." The quiet shift in the room was immediate. A few reporters scribbled faster. The defense attorney, who had been smirking moments ago, darted a glance at Grayson. The judge's smirk faltered, but he quickly covered it with a dismissive chuckle. "Careful, Mr. Musk," he warned, leaning forward. That almost sounded like an accusation. Musk simply held his gaze. "Just making an observation." The judge's fingers curled into a fist for half a second before he turned his attention to the prosecution. Move along. I have other cases to get to. The prosecutor, a composed woman in a navy suit, adjusted her glasses and nodded. Your Honor, the financial records presented show clear discrepancies. Funds allocated far beyond the approved budget. Musk's legal team placed a set of documents on the table. The prosecutor pointed to the projection screen where a list of transactions appeared. Here, she continued, we see a $30 million transfer made outside of regulatory oversight. Grayson sighed dramatically, rubbing his temple. God, I hate numbers, he muttered. Do we really need to sit through this accounting lesson? The murmurs in the courtroom grew louder. Musk's attorney shot him a quick look. Everyone knew this was unusual. A judge dismissing financial evidence outright? That wasn't standard procedure. Musk clasped his hands together. With all due respect, Your Honor, these numbers determine the entire case. Grayson waved a hand in mock exasperation. And yet, I fail to see anything substantial. What exactly are you trying to prove, Mr. Musk? That you're rich? Laughter rippled from the defense side, but this time, it was weaker. Some in the room sensed something was off. Musk inhaled slowly. Your Honor, we are proving that funds were misused, and those responsible are avoiding accountability. The judge's smirk returned. And that's rich, coming from you. Musk held his expression neutral, though he could feel the shift happening. The way Grayson was reacting, quick, dismissive, overly defensive, it wasn't just arrogance. It was something else. He was protecting something. The prosecutor flipped the page in her folder. Your Honor, I'd like to present Exhibit C, an internal email thread obtained through subpoena that directly contradicts. Denied, Grayson said, cutting her off. Silence. Musk tilted his head. Your Honor, you haven't even seen the contents. And I don't need to, Grayson replied smoothly. I already know where this is going. Speculation. Hearsay. We don't deal in rumors in my courtroom. Musk let out a slow breath, his mind working quickly. The judge wasn't even pretending to be neutral anymore. He was burying this case before it even started. A soft shuffle from behind, the legal team exchanging glances, recognizing the same thing. Musk adjusted his cuff and leaned slightly forward. Your Honor, he said, his voice measured. Are you refusing to allow key evidence before hearing its relevance? The judge's jaw tightened for a fraction of a second. I'm refusing to waste this court's time. The tension in the air shifted again, the weight of the moment hanging thickly. Musk's lips curled into the faintest smirk. He had him. The cracks in Judge Grayson's composure were starting to show. And Musk wasn't about to stop now. The air in the courtroom felt heavier now. The laughter and side comments had faded, replaced by an uneasy silence. The judge had dismissed every critical piece of evidence without so much as a second glance, and Musk wasn't the only one who noticed. The way Grayson carried himself, his rushed decisions, his impatience, it was starting to feel deliberate. Musk leaned back slightly, studying the man in front of him. The judge's fingers tapped the bench in a steady rhythm, his eyes scanning over documents he wasn't even pretending to read. Musk had dealt with enough powerful figures to recognize when someone was hiding something. The prosecutor cleared her throat, lifting another sheet of paper. Your Honor, I'd like to direct the court's attention to this financial statement. Grayson waved a hand dismissively. If this is more of the same, I see no reason to indulge it. A few people in the gallery exchanged glances. Even the jury, who had remained passive until now, seemed more alert. Musk's legal counsel hesitated. This wasn't how hearings were supposed to go. Judges could be strict, but outright blocking evidence without justification? That was unusual. Musk leaned forward, placing his hands on the table. Your Honor, if I may. Grayson's eyes flicked to him, impatience clear in his expression. Make it quick, Mr. Musk. Musk kept his voice steady. I understand you don't want to waste time, so I'll be direct. If you look at the records, you'll see an unauthorized transaction. $30 million shifted through a shell company that didn't exist 6 months ago. The judge barely let him finish. Irrelevant, he snapped. Next. Musk didn't move. His gaze remained locked on Grayson. The reaction had been too fast, too sharp. He tilted his head slightly. That's interesting, Your Honor. Grayson narrowed his eyes. What is? Musk let the silence stretch before responding. I never said which transaction I was referring to. The judge's expression faltered for the briefest moment. It was quick, almost too quick to notice. But Musk saw it. The courtroom was still. Musk tapped the document in front of him. This case involves multiple questionable financial movements. Yet, you dismissed one in particular before I could specify. A few reporters in the back started scribbling faster. Grayson leaned back, folding his arms. Mr. Musk, I don't appreciate what you're implying. Musk shrugged. I haven't implied anything. Just making an observation. The prosecutor glanced at Musk, then back at the judge. She saw it too now. Grayson exhaled sharply. Are we done wasting time? Musk's smirk was barely noticeable. Not quite. He picked up another file, flipping it open. Let's talk about transaction ID 90847. The judge stiffened. It was small, just a twitch of the jaw, a momentary hesitation, but it was enough. Musk didn't even look at the document as he spoke. $30 million redirected to an account registered offshore, tied to an entity that doesn't file taxes. Would you like to guess who authorized that? The silence was absolute. The prosecutor turned a page in her file. Your Honor, these records indicate that. Grayson slammed a hand on the bench. That's enough. The sudden outburst sent a ripple through the room. A murmur passed between the jury members. Even the defense attorneys seemed caught off guard. Musk just watched. He wasn't even angry. He was intrigued. He leaned forward. Did I say something wrong? Grayson's nostrils flared. This line of questioning is over. Musk nodded slowly. Of course. He set the file down, but his smirk didn't fade. He had exactly what he needed. This wasn't just about shutting down the case. The judge was protecting someone. Or maybe, he was protecting himself. The courtroom was still. The weight of what had just happened pressed down on every person in the room. Judge Grayson had been dismissing evidence all morning, shutting down key arguments before they could even be made. But now, something had shifted. His reactions weren't just impatience, they were fear. Musk let the silence stretch before reaching into his briefcase. Slowly, deliberately, he placed a small recording device on the table. He didn't say anything. He didn't have to. A single button click. The room filled with a voice, low, sharp, and unmistakable. Make sure this case doesn't make it past the first hearing. Musk has too much influence. We can't let him win this one. The sound echoed against the courtroom walls. The silence that followed was deafening. Grayson's fingers clenched into the armrests of his chair. His usual smirk had vanished. His eyes darted across the room, as if searching for a way out. Musk leaned back, watching. He wasn't gloating. He was waiting. Reporters scrambled to jot down notes. The defense attorneys shifted, exchanging nervous glances. A few jurors leaned forward, brows furrowed. Musk's voice was calm. Would Your Honor like to explain why you were discussing my case outside of these proceedings? The judge opened his mouth, but no words came. His throat worked as if he was swallowing something bitter. Finally, he spoke. He cleared his throat. That recording is inadmissible. Musk tilted his head slightly. Is that so? Grayson straightened in his seat, recovering some of his usual arrogance. Unauthorized recordings are a violation of privacy. This courtroom will not entertain illegally obtained evidence. Musk's attorney slid a folder across the table. Then it's a good thing this was obtained legally. The prosecutor lifted a document, her voice steady. This transcript is from a court-approved wiretap. We had reason to believe external influence was being exerted on this case. Grayson's face lost what little color it had left. Musk didn't look away. Shall I play the rest? For the first time that day, the judge had nothing to say. A murmur rippled through the room. The prosecutor turned another page. Your Honor, the recorded conversations suggest interference with judicial proceedings. This is a direct conflict of interest. Grayson's hand gripped the bench, his knuckles whitening. This is a distortion of reality. The media is twisting everything. Musk arched a brow. The media didn't say it, Your Honor. You did. The tension reached its peak. A sharp inhale came from someone in the jury. Even the stenographer, whose job was to remain neutral, hesitated for half a second before continuing her typing. Musk tapped the recorder again. Another voice joined the playback, one that wasn't the judge's. Don't worry, Arthur. The case won't hold. As long as you shut it down early, the board will take care of the rest. The gallery erupted in gasps. Someone whispered, "Who was that?" Musk crossed his arms. Now that's an interesting question. Grayson's jaw was tight. His fingers curled against the wood of his bench, but he didn't interrupt this time. He couldn't. Musk leaned forward. Shall we continue? The judge didn't answer, but Musk already knew he had him. The silence stretched long and thick. The weight of the moment pressed against every person in the room, the realization settling in like a slow-moving storm. Judge Grayson, once so smug and untouchable, now sat frozen in his seat. His lips were parted slightly, but no words came out. He knew. Everyone did. Musk exhaled softly, his eyes never leaving the man on the bench. Then, with the smallest nod, he set everything into motion. A door at the back of the courtroom swung open. The sharp sound of footsteps echoed off the polished floor. A row of figures in dark suits emerged, calm, deliberate, unavoidable. The tension snapped like a live wire. The lead agent, a tall man with sharp features, stepped forward, his voice firm. Judge Arthur Grayson, he announced, pulling a badge from his pocket. You are under arrest for obstruction of justice, bribery, and conspiracy to commit fraud. Gasps rippled through the room, loud and uncontrolled. Reporters scrambled, fingers flying across notepads, cameras flashing like rapid bursts of lightning. Jurors exchanged wide-eyed glances, their shock visible. Grayson's head jerked up, disbelief flashing across his face. You, his voice caught in his throat. You can't. The lead agent took another step. Sir, I'd advise you not to resist. The judge shot up from his chair, knocking over a glass of water in the process. This is outrageous, he bellowed, his voice hoarse with panic. You have no authority. The agent remained calm. We do. A second officer reached into his pocket, pulling out a set of gleaming handcuffs. Musk didn't move. He simply watched. The courtroom erupted into chaos. Lawyers murmured furiously amongst themselves, defense attorneys whispered behind their hands, and the jury sat frozen, their expressions caught between shock and fascination. Judge Grayson's face turned red, his breath coming in sharp bursts. I am the law in this courtroom, he barked. You can't. This is political. This is. A sharp click cut him off. Cold metal snapped around his wrists. He flinched, his body going rigid. You have the right to remain silent, the agent continued, voice steady. For the first time, Judge Grayson actually was. The sight of a man who had spent his life ruling from the bench, now standing in shackles before a room full of people who once feared him, was a moment no one would forget. Musk finally moved, adjusting the cuff of his suit jacket. He didn't need to say anything. The reality of the moment spoke for itself. Across the room, the defense attorneys looked like they had seen a ghost. Their usual smirks had vanished, replaced with something closer to dread. The corporate executives, who had come expecting another routine hearing, sat stiffly, realizing this wasn't just another case. This was something much bigger. Musk finally turned toward them, his expression unreadable. Now, he said smoothly, should we proceed with the case, or are we done here? No one answered. No one dared. Judge Grayson's eyes darted around wildly as if searching for a way out. His shoulders were tense, his breathing quick. He opened his mouth again, but nothing came out. Reality had caught up with him. The officers led him toward the exit, each step echoing against the now silent chamber. The doors swung open, and with one final glance at the room, the fallen judge was taken away. Musk remained seated. He didn't celebrate, didn't gloat. He simply watched the power shift, as it always did. And he knew this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. The room still felt tense, as if the walls themselves were processing what had just happened. Judge Grayson was gone, led out in handcuffs, his once commanding presence reduced to nothing. But the echoes of his downfall still lingered, thick and heavy in the air. No one spoke at first. Lawyers sat motionless, their notes forgotten. The jury remained stiff in their seats, their expressions shifting between disbelief and understanding. Even the defense attorneys, who had worn smug grins just an hour ago, now looked like they were scrambling to comprehend what had just unraveled before them. The prosecution, however, wasted no time. The lead attorney turned a page in her file, her voice steady. Your Honor, in light of recent developments, the prosecution moves to proceed with the remaining evidence. The newly assigned judge, who had watched the entire ordeal unfold from the sidelines, cleared his throat and adjusted his glasses. Motion granted. The defense attorney, a middle-aged man in an expensive suit, finally found his voice. Your Honor, I request a brief recess. Musk leaned forward slightly, his expression calm. I don't see a reason for that. The lawyer shot him a sharp look, but Musk didn't waver. We came here for the truth, Musk continued, and I think the court deserves to hear it. The room buzzed again, whispers spreading across the gallery. Reporters scribbled notes furiously, their cameras still trained on the scene. They knew this wasn't just another trial. This was history unfolding in real time. The judge hesitated for a brief moment, then gave a single nod. Proceed. The prosecution team wasted no time. More documents were placed on the table, new evidence revealed, financial statements, emails, records of backdoor dealings that stretched far beyond what had initially been suspected. It wasn't just Judge Grayson. It was bigger. Musk sat back, watching as the puzzle pieces came together. The tangled web of corruption was finally being unraveled, one string at a time. The defense attorney, sensing the shift, leaned into his mic. Your Honor, my client would like to discuss a deal. That caught everyone's attention. Musk turned toward the man at the defense table, Charles Lawson, the developer whose financial misconduct had started this entire case. Moments ago, he had been stone-faced, convinced he was untouchable. Now, he looked different. His hands were clasped tightly together, his shoulders tense. He was cornered. The prosecutor didn't react immediately. She flipped through her notes, taking her time. What kind of deal? Lawson swallowed hard. Immunity, he said quickly, in exchange for full cooperation. A murmur spread through the gallery. Even the judge raised an eyebrow. Musk exhaled softly, shaking his head. That's a bold request, he mused. Especially for someone who thought they were above consequences just 10 minutes ago. Lawson shifted in his seat. I can give names, he pressed. Bigger names. The room went still. Musk glanced at the prosecutor, reading her expression. She was considering it. Finally, she spoke. We'll need details first. Lawson nodded quickly, eager. Fine, whatever you need. The moment stretched, the weight of his words sinking in. Musk leaned back slightly, his voice calm. It's funny, he said, his tone almost casual. People always say I have too much control. That I'm the one pulling the strings. Lawson stayed silent. Musk tilted his head slightly. But today, we learned who was really running the show. The courtroom was still. No one argued. No one interrupted. Because they all knew, it was true. The judge looked toward the prosecution team. I suggest we move this discussion into a formal negotiation setting. The prosecutor nodded. Agreed. The judge banged his gavel. Court is adjourned. A collective breath seemed to be released all at once. People stood, Conversations bubbling instantly, reporters rushing toward the exits to file their stories. The cameras followed Musk as he stood, buttoning his suit jacket with ease. He didn't celebrate. He didn't need to. The truth had spoken for itself. As he walked toward the doors, he caught a glimpse of Lawson still seated at the table, shoulders slumped, eyes darting nervously. His safety net was gone, and he knew it. Musk didn't stop. He simply walked past, his expression unreadable. This wasn't over. It was only the beginning.